Let me be brutally honest with you right from the start. What I'm about to break down is something the Cleveland Browns organization probably wishes stayed behind closed doors. But Tommy Rees just confirmed what many of us have been thinking for months, and the implications for Shedeur Sanders and this entire franchise are massive. I've been covering the NFL for years, and I can tell you right now that press conferences like the one Tommy Rees just gave don't happen often. This wasn't some rehearsed corporate presentation, where every answer was carefully vetted by PR teams. This was a coordinator who just got promoted, speaking candidly about a quarterback situation that has everyone in Cleveland scratching their heads. And when he started talking about Shedeur Sanders, the fifth-round rookie who hasn't seen a single regular season snap despite generating more buzz than any backup quarterback in recent memory, things got fascinating in a hurry. So, Tommy Rees walks into this media session fresh off his promotion from tight ends coach to offensive coordinator. The guy is 32 years old, spent just 1 year in Cleveland, and now he's calling plays for an offense that ranked dead last in scoring during the 2024 season. Before landing in Cleveland, Rees was at Alabama and Notre Dame, two programs where offensive excellence isn't just expected, it's mandatory. At Notre Dame, his offenses were averaging over 30 points per game and producing NFL quarterbacks. At Alabama, under Nick Saban, everything operated with precision that most NFL teams would envy. Now he's in Cleveland, where the offense averaged a pathetic 15.2 points per game last season and made watching grass grow look exciting by comparison. When reporters started pressing Rees about the quarterback situation, specifically about why Shedeur Sanders hasn't gotten meaningful opportunities despite all the talent evaluators who believe he could be special, Rees could have deflected. He could have given some generic answer about development timelines and trusting the process. Instead, he admitted something that should have every Browns fan paying attention. Rees essentially said that because practice reps are limited, they've had to get creative about manufacturing extra opportunities specifically for Sanders. Think about what he's actually acknowledging here. He's confirming that Sanders isn't getting first-team reps with the starting offense, that the normal practice structure doesn't provide enough opportunities for him to develop properly, and that they're having to create supplemental sessions just to keep him engaged and progressing. But here's where it gets really interesting. Rees called this a unique situation and admitted he doesn't know how many times it's probably happened in NFL history, but probably not a lot translation. The Browns have created a bizarre quarterback predicament where they've got Dillon Gabriel, a third-round pick who's starting and struggling with a quarterback rating that ranks second worst in the entire league, and then there's Sanders, a fifth-round selection that many draft analysts had pegged as a potential first-round talent, stuck on the sideline getting creative extra reps after practice instead of legitimate game preparation time with the first team. According to reports from CBS sports analyst Ross Tucker and others with access to Browns practices, these creative extra reps that Rees mentioned are essentially bonus practice periods carved out specifically for Sanders after regular team activities conclude. These aren't normal team reps where he's running the actual offensive system with the starting receivers and offensive line. These are supplemental sessions, additional work squeezed in because there simply aren't enough snaps during regular practice to give Sanders any meaningful preparation. It's like being the smartest student in class, but the teacher keeps calling on someone else for every question. So they pull you aside after school for private tutoring just to keep you from completely checking out mentally. Browns quarterback coach Billy Musgrave tried to clarify this situation earlier in the season when rumors started circulating that Sanders wasn't getting any reps whatsoever. Musgrave emphasized that all backup quarterbacks, including Sanders, Dillon Gabriel when he wasn't starting, and Bailey Zappe, have been taking scout team reps at practice. For those unfamiliar with how NFL practices work, scout team reps mean you're simulating the opponent's offense to prepare your defense for what they'll face on Sunday. It's valuable work for staying sharp and learning defensive schemes, but it's fundamentally different from getting meaningful offensive reps, where you're actually running your team's plays, developing chemistry with your receivers, learning the timing of routes, and getting comfortable in the offensive system that you might have to execute in a real game at a moment's notice. Sanders himself addressed the rep situation back during mandatory minicamp in June with a maturity level that honestly should shame some veteran players around the league. He said life is based on how you view different things, and you can view not getting reps negatively, or you can be proactive and prepare for when your time comes. He emphasized there are no excuses, because when you get in an actual game, nobody cares how many practice reps you had beforehand. That's the mindset of a true professional, someone who understands that complaining won't change his circumstances, but being prepared absolutely will when opportunity finally arrives. But let's address the elephant in the room that should bother every single Browns fan watching this team stumble through another lost season. Sanders is handling this situation with incredible grace and professionalism. He's doing everything right off the field with community work and charitable efforts that have endeared him to Cleveland fans despite never playing a down. He's maintaining a positive attitude despite circumstances that would frustrate most young players. And according to multiple credible reports from people who've attended Browns practices, he's reportedly dominating when he does get opportunities to throw the football. Yet somehow the organization still seems hesitant to give him a legitimate shot at competing for playing time. Now Tommy Rees comes along and basically confirms what everyone has suspected for months. They're aware Sanders needs development. They know he's not getting enough reps. They understand it's a unique and somewhat problematic situation, but they're committed to being creative about finding him opportunities rather than just giving him actual first-team reps during normal practice periods. The question that nobody at that press conference seemed brave enough to ask is the most obvious one screaming in everyone's mind. If you know Shedeur Sanders needs reps, if you're already going out of your way to create special practice periods specifically for him, if you believe he's got the mental makeup and physical tools to be successful, and if your current starting quarterback Dillon Gabriel is posting a quarterback rating of 26.8, which is second worst in the entire NFL, then why in the world are you not giving Sanders actual first-team reps during regular practice? Head coach Kevin Stefanski addressed this question himself just a few weeks ago when reporters pressed him on why Sanders went from getting some first-team reps earlier in the season to suddenly being completely locked out of working with the starters. Stefanski's answer was revealing in its simplicity. He explained that with a young quarterback like Dillon Gabriel starting, you want to make sure he gets maximum reps, which is different from when you have a veteran like Joe Flacco, who doesn't need as many practice repetitions because he's seen everything multiple times over a long career. On the surface, that logic makes sense. Gabriel is a rookie starter navigating his first NFL regular season, and maximizing his preparation time seems reasonable. But here's where Stefanski's reasoning falls apart completely. Dillon Gabriel isn't just struggling a little bit or going through normal rookie growing pains. The man is absolutely drowning out there. Through his first 6 starts, he completed just under 60% of his passes, threw only 5 touchdowns compared to 2 interceptions, and consistently failed to move the offense effectively. In their loss to the New York Jets, a team that came into that game with a single win all season, Gabriel was sacked 6 times, completed 17 of 32 passes for just 167 yards, and while he did throw 2 touchdowns, many of his incompletions were absolute head-scratchers that had even casual fans questioning his decision-making and field awareness. The Browns' offense under Gabriel has been anemic, lifeless, and completely unable to sustain drives or put points on the board with any consistency. They currently rank second to last in the NFL in scoring offense, averaging just 14 points per game. That's not a typo. 14 points per game in today's NFL, where offenses are supposed to be explosive and 40-point games happen regularly. The Browns are struggling to crack 20 points most weeks. So when Tommy Rees admits they're having to get creative with Shedeur Sanders' development because there aren't enough reps to go around, what he's really saying is that they've committed to Dillon Gabriel as the starter regardless of performance, and Sanders is going to have to make do with whatever scraps of practice time they can manufacture for him on the side. That's not a development plan. That's organizational stubbornness dressed up as patience. And Browns fans are seeing right through it because they've lived through this exact movie approximately 40 times since the franchise returned to Cleveland in 1999. That's 40 different starting quarterbacks in 25 years, the most quarterback changes of any team in the league during that span, you'd think at some point the organization would learn that maybe, just maybe, when something clearly isn't working, you need to try something different before the season is completely lost and you're picking in the top 5 again. Where Tommy Rees's comments get even more interesting and potentially revealing about what's happening behind closed doors is when he talks about his relationship with Kevin Stefanski. Rees made it abundantly clear that this relationship was the primary reason he took the job in Cleveland 2 years ago. He said he came to Cleveland specifically to work for Kevin, that he thinks the world of Stefanski, and that he's fortunate for the support Stefanski has given him. That sounds great on the surface, very collegial and professional, but read between the lines for just a moment, Rees is essentially saying his loyalty is to Kevin Stefanski, not necessarily to what might be best for the team or what might give them the best chance to win games right now. When Rees talks about the timing of his promotion and how the bye week gave him time to step away and look at things through a different perspective with an eye toward creating a spark for the offense, he's acknowledging that something fundamental needs to change. The offense has been a complete disaster. Everyone in the organization knows it. The fans know it. The media knows it. Opponents know it and are licking their chops every time they see Cleveland on their schedule because it's practically a guaranteed win. But that spark Rees wants to create apparently doesn't involve giving Shedeur Sanders a legitimate opportunity to compete for the starting job or even get consistent backup reps with the first-team offense. So, what exactly is this spark going to come from? Better play calling, improved route concepts, more creative play designs, those things might help marginally around the edges, but they don't fix the fundamental problem that Dillon Gabriel has shown through 6 starts that he's simply not ready to be an NFL starting quarterback right now. Multiple reports from credible people who've attended Browns practices paint a very different picture than what we're seeing on Sundays. These aren't internet rumors or message board speculation from anonymous fans. These are legitimate reporters and analysts who have access to watch practice and see what's happening with their own eyes. They've consistently reported that Shedeur Sanders looks phenomenal when he gets opportunities to throw the football. He's accurate. He's got a strong arm. He shows good decision-making. He looks comfortable operating in the pocket. One local radio host in Cleveland mentioned watching Sanders light it up during practice periods and questioned how a quarterback who was rated as a late first-round prospect by numerous analysts can't even get on the field for a team that's 2-7 and desperately needs any kind of spark or change. That's the million-dollar question that Tommy Rees danced around in his press conference without ever directly addressing. How can a 5th-round pick, who many believe fell dramatically on draft day due to character concerns that have since proven to be completely unfounded, who is by most accounts performing well in his limited practice opportunities, who has the mental makeup and physical tools to potentially be a franchise quarterback, continue riding the bench while the team circles the drain with another quarterback who clearly isn't getting the job done? The answer, unfortunately, seems to be organizational pride and stubbornness that we've seen derail promising situations before in this league. The Browns selected Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round, 94th overall, before trading up in the 5th round to grab Sanders at pick 144. Gabriel was the higher investment in terms of draft capital, and there's clearly a part of the Browns front office and coaching staff that desperately wants their 3rd-round pick to justify that selection, admitting they might have been wrong about the pecking order, that maybe the guy they took in the 5th round is actually better than the guy they took in the 3rd round, would be a difficult pill to swallow. It would open up questions about their evaluation process, their draft strategy, their decision-making, and their ability to properly assess quarterback talent. So instead, they're doubling down on Gabriel, giving him every possible opportunity to figure it out, to develop chemistry with receivers, to adjust to NFL defensive schemes, all while Sanders sits on the sideline getting creative supplemental reps after practice, like he's some sort of special project that needs to be hidden away until the perfect moment arrives. Except in the NFL, the perfect moment rarely comes. Opportunities are fleeting. Windows open and close in the blink of an eye. And right now, while the Browns waste this season continuing to play a quarterback who isn't ready, they're simultaneously wasting valuable development time for a quarterback who might actually give them a chance to win some games and salvage something from this disaster of a season. Tommy Rees also touched on what it's been like transitioning from the college game to the NFL, specifically addressing differences in preparation and play calling between his time at Alabama and Notre Dame versus what he's experiencing in Cleveland. He compared calling plays at those elite college programs to driving a Ferrari where everything is smooth, sleek, and operating at maximum efficiency. The implication, though he didn't say it quite this directly, is that calling plays for the Browns' offense feels more like pushing a shopping cart with a busted wheel through a parking lot during a thunderstorm. Every snap is an adventure. Every play call comes with uncertainty about whether players will execute properly. Every drive feels like you're one mistake away from complete catastrophe. That's a brutal but honest assessment of where this offense currently stands, and it raises another critical question. If the offensive infrastructure is this broken, if the system is this dysfunctional, if every snap feels like chaos, then isn't that actually an argument for giving Shedeur Sanders a chance? When an offense is humming and everything is clicking, sure, you don't want to mess with chemistry or disrupt what's working. But when literally nothing is working, when you're ranked near the bottom of the league in every meaningful offensive category, when your quarterback is getting sacked 6 times in a game, when you can't sustain drives or put points on the board, what exactly do you have to lose by trying something different? The Browns are 2-7. Their playoff hopes are mathematically alive, but realistically dead. They're playing out the string at this point, trying to find anything positive to build on for next season. Every game that Dillon Gabriel starts and struggles is a game where they could have been getting Shedeur Sanders valuable live game experience. Even if Sanders came in and struggled initially, at least they'd be learning what they have in him, identifying specific areas where he needs to improve, and giving him the kind of real game reps that you simply cannot replicate in practice, no matter how creative you get with supplemental sessions. The most frustrating part of Tommy Rees's comments is that he acknowledges all of this to some degree. He knows Sanders needs reps. He knows the situation is unique and problematic. He knows they have 2 talented young quarterbacks who are both bought into the process and working hard. But the solution they've apparently landed on is to just keep doing what they're doing. Keep giving Gabriel all the first-team reps. Keep creating creative side sessions for Sanders. And hope that somehow, magically, this approach leads to better results. That's not a plan. That's wishful thinking disguised as player development. Bernie Kosar, the legendary Browns quarterback who knows a thing or two about what it takes to succeed in Cleveland and in the NFL, weighed in on this situation earlier in the season with comments that perfectly captured the delicate balance teams try to strike with young quarterbacks. Kosar said he'd like to see Shedeur Sanders play, that he wants Sanders to succeed, but he also cautioned that the NFL has a tendency to massively ruin young quarterbacks when they play prematurely without adequate talent around them to give them a chance. Kosar emphasized that while he loves Sanders and wants him to succeed, he worries about potentially stunting his growth by throwing him into the fire too early before the infrastructure is in place. That's the wisdom of someone who's been through the wars and understands the long-term implications of mishandling a young quarterback's development. But here's where Kosar's caution and the Browns' current approach diverge in a critical way. Kosar was talking about not wanting to ruin Sanders by playing him before he's ready and before the team has built adequate infrastructure around him to give him a chance to succeed. That's sound logic when you're talking about a team with a legitimate veteran starter who's performing well and buying time for the rookie to develop properly behind the scenes. But that's not the situation in Cleveland right now. They don't have a competent veteran protecting Sanders' development. They have another rookie who's struggling just as much, if not more, than Sanders likely would if given the same opportunity. So the question becomes, if both quarterbacks are going to struggle because the offensive line is porous, the play calling has been questionable, and the overall system is dysfunctional, wouldn't you rather be developing and evaluating the quarterback with the higher ceiling, the one that many scouts and draft analysts believed was the more talented prospect coming out of college? The Browns' defense deserves so much better than what the offense is giving them week after week. Myles Garrett is having another absolutely dominant season and will be squarely in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. The defensive unit overall has played well enough to keep Cleveland competitive in games, but time and again the offense fails to capitalize on opportunities, fails to sustain drives, and puts the defense right back on the field where they eventually break down from sheer exhaustion. In their loss to the Jets, the Browns' defense held New York to just 27 points, and in today's NFL, where offenses regularly score 35 to 40 points, holding an opponent to 27 should absolutely give you a legitimate chance to win the game. But Cleveland's offense could only muster 20 points, and even those felt like they came more from individual effort and broken plays than from cohesive offensive execution. Tommy Rees is walking into an absolute mess of a situation, and to his credit, he's not sugarcoating it or pretending like everything is fine. When he talks about needing to find rhythm, about making receivers more comfortable in the system, about reducing drops and improving execution, he's identifying real problems that have plagued this offense all season long. But rhythm doesn't just magically appear out of thin air. Chemistry isn't built overnight, and all the play-calling creativity in the world doesn't matter if the quarterback can't execute the plays or doesn't have enough time in the pocket to let routes develop. Cleveland's offensive line has been decimated by injuries all season, shuffling through 7 different starting combinations in just the first 8 weeks alone. The receiving core, while talented on paper with guys like Jerry Jeudy, who just made his first Pro Bowl, Cedric Tillman, and others, has struggled to get consistent separation or create explosive plays down the field that can change games. Running back Quinshon Judkins has shown flashes of being a legitimate weapon out of the backfield, but he hasn't gotten enough touches to establish any kind of consistent ground game that can set up play action or keep defenses honest. The entire offensive ecosystem is broken from top to bottom, which again raises the fundamental question of what exactly the Browns are protecting by refusing to give Shedeur Sanders a legitimate shot. They're not protecting a winning formula. They're not preserving a playoff run. They're not maintaining anything of real value. They're simply continuing to do the same thing over and over while expecting different results, which is essentially the textbook definition of insanity. What makes this situation even more frustrating for Browns fans is watching how Shedeur Sanders has conducted himself with such class and professionalism throughout all of this. While Dillon Gabriel gets all the first-team reps and all the game opportunities, Sanders is out in the community, giving away cars to single mothers, visiting local high schools to inspire students, showing up at youth football camps, and becoming genuinely beloved by Cleveland fans despite not having played a single down in a regular season game. He's building real connections with the city, demonstrating the kind of character and leadership qualities that you want from a franchise quarterback, and doing it all without complaining publicly about his lack of playing time or causing any drama in the locker room. When Sanders was asked directly about not getting first-team reps during minicamp, he talked about viewing the situation through the right lens and focusing on being the best teammate possible. He said his goal is to be as polished as he can be in every aspect of the game, and that he's got time to grow, mature, and understand the ins and outs of NFL defenses while getting insight from veterans in the quarterback room. That's the response of someone who understands that the way you handle adversity says infinitely more about your character than how you handle success. Sanders could be pouting, demanding a trade, complaining to the media, or causing problems in the locker room. Instead, he's being the ultimate professional, and honestly, the Browns organization should be embarrassed that they're wasting that kind of attitude and talent on the sideline week after week. Tommy Rees's comments shed significant light on the internal dynamics within the Browns organization, and specifically his relationship with Kevin Stefanski. Rees made it abundantly clear that Stefanski is his guy, that he came to Cleveland specifically to work under Stefanski, and that he's grateful for the support and opportunities Stefanski has provided. That loyalty is admirable in many ways and speaks well of Rees's character, but it also suggests that Rees might be hesitant to push too hard for changes that Stefanski isn't ready to make. If Stefanski has made the determination that Dylan Gabriel is his starting quarterback and that he's going to ride with Gabriel through thick and thin regardless of results, then Reese as a first-year offensive coordinator probably isn't going to rock the boat by advocating too strongly for Sanders to get meaningful playing time. That's just organizational politics and the reality of coaching hierarchies in the NFL. You don't get promoted and then immediately start second-guessing your head coach's personnel decisions, especially when that head coach is the reason you took the job in the first place. But at what point does organizational loyalty cross the line into organizational malpractice? At what point do you have to set aside personal relationships and do what's genuinely best for the team, for the fans who are paying money to watch this product, and for the young quarterback who's handling a difficult situation with remarkable maturity? These are questions that the Browns front office needs to seriously grapple with as this lost season continues to slip away. The window for making changes and salvaging something positive from this year is rapidly closing, and every week that passes with the same approach produces the same disappointing results. What Tommy Rees confirmed in that press conference, whether he fully intended to or not, is that the Browns know they have a quarterback situation that needs addressing. They know Shedeur Sanders isn't getting what he needs to properly develop, and they've chosen to handle it by creating workarounds and supplemental sessions rather than making the difficult but necessary decision to give Sanders a real opportunity to compete. That's not bold leadership. That's not what successful organizations do when faced with obvious problems. That's playing it safe, protecting draft capital investments, and hoping things somehow work themselves out without anyone having to make uncomfortable decisions or admit mistakes. And based on 25 years of Browns football since the franchise returned, we all know how that story typically ends.